This past Monday, I was able to go to court and attend the hearing in the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer case, where they argued over this 47.1 motion that Blake Lively has outstanding. Blake Lively is trying to use this California Civil Code Section 47.1, which is colloquially known as a Me Too type law. She's trying to use this new law, which has never really been tested, to recover huge punitive damages from Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties on the basis that the lawsuit they filed for defamation in response to her, in my opinion, defamatory statements was retaliatory against her for a protected activity. That protected activity being her complaints of sexual harassment in the workplace. Now, Blake Lively didn't want to go to trial. She didn't want to face a jury because she, in my opinion, knew that wasn't going to go well for her. But she does want to continue to fight this out so that she can be the face or the accessory behind the 47.1 law as they fight to take that nationwide, and she can swoop in and be the face of other survivors' work. Because some people feel that having a poster celebrity behind your cause will help it go through. The architect behind the 47.1 law, Victoria Burke, disagrees with that sentiment, but we'll get to that later. When I was at court on Monday, I saw some people I recognized outside. I went and talked to them. We saw some of the lawyers go in. I watched Elsie asking some questions to Brian Friedman and others. And I was just kind of observing whatever was going on outside before the hearing. And I saw a group of people come up pretty close to me, and they stood next to each other and they started to hold up these signs. And it was, not long before the hearing started. So not long before anybody else actually went inside. But I immediately recognized the signs because it said Sanctuary for Families, and that was one of the organizations who wrote an amicus brief for Blake Lively when she was fighting Justin Baldoni's countersuit. And so I knew right then and there that something was a little odd. It seemed to me that this was something organized and set up by her attorneys, which I can't say is anything illegal, but I find it interesting, given that I was dragged into this legal process simply for voicing support for Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties, me and 106 other content creators. But when I saw these activists there and making a display and then gathered around Ezra Hudson after the hearing outside, that kind of working together seems to be fine. However, independent creators, even women online who voice opinions against their clients, seem to meet the bill for what they feel is legal wrongdoing or collusion or whatever they were getting at, you know what I mean? To the point they needed to subpoena us. All extremely hypocritical and frustrating. But that being said, my thoughts on that day, everybody's different. I saw Elsie kind of doing the Lord's work out there, interviewing everybody, even Blake's attorneys, interviewing these people from SFF. But everybody's different, and we all know that I'm a little bit different socially, and I was having a really hard day because I had just found out that my mom had been in an accident. I was in a state far away, and there was nothing I could do at the moment. So I didn't really have the energy to argue with these people, engage with these people. My point of view was, I'm here at the courthouse where I have a right to be, where these people have a right to be. We're very different people who have to share the same space. So I just wanted to, at that time, kind of respect their space, give them a wide berth and not bother them, because that's how I wanted them to treat me. So that's what I did. I went inside. I didn't bother anybody, didn't ask any questions. And I knew that later on I could wait and see what happened, and I could speak my mind here. Under different circumstances, maybe I would have engaged differently, but that was how things were for me on that day. So for me, I felt like I wanted those people to respect my space and leave me alone. So I treated them how I wanted to be treated. But having processed things now and seeing the way they're using Blake Lively as a face for abuse survivors, I feel disappointed. The simple explanation is that I feel disappointed that these organizations would prop up someone who has used her enormous privilege to punish any other woman who has stood in between her and her fame and her money. And I feel tired of explaining the long and complicated list of things Blake has done to show she has no interest in standing up for everyday women and has every intention of flaunting the Me Too type laws and these survivor organizations as unearned brownie points on her resume. For example, I just saw this post on Twitter or X from them today. What a night. SFFNY Zero Tolerance Benefit raised critical resources for our most vulnerable survivors of domestic violence, from the incredible honorees to the survivors on stage to Blake Lively. This was NYC magic all around. And I just feel like using Blake Lively at an event like that is Wow. I mean, that's certainly a choice. It'll give them the celebrity brownie points. But I found that really disappointing that these organizations are going to prop up Blake Lively, who was not honest about her claims, and will possibly ruin chances for survivors to get laws implemented that could protect them. Because if Blake Lively, who wasn't honest, is the face of your law and your organization, you're going to run into some problems for people who really need your help. So let me explain this a little more thoroughly, and then we can discuss Victoria Burke, the architect of the 47-1 law in California, who's now spoken out against Blake Lively using this law as a PR accessory to the detriment of victims. What makes Blake Lively such a baffling choice for a survivor icon, an abuse survivor icon, is that, in my opinion, she spent this entire saga demonstrating the exact opposite of the values she's supposedly being celebrated for. If Justin is innocent, which I believe he is, then turning Blake into the patron saint of survivors isn't just misguided, it's really damaging to the people who need help from these organizations. Nothing hurts a movement faster than putting the wrong person on a pedestal and then demanding everyone pretend not to notice. People are going to look at your organization, and Blake Lively, the new face of that organization, whether you propped her up as the face of it or not, she is now the face of your organization in the public eye. So people are going to look at that and think, wow, we better not support that organization because they don't actually pay attention to the things that they're donating their time and money to. They're not actually invested in finding a legitimate cause to support. And let's talk about the women supporting women part for a second, because apparently Believe Women comes with an asterisk if the woman in question is Jennifer Abel. We're supposed to cheer for someone as a champion and pioneer of women's rights while watching another woman's rights get steamrolled because Jen happened to be inconvenient to Blake's narrative. That's some kind of weird selective feminism with a VIP guest list. And then, of course, there were the subpoenas. More than 100 content creators, including myself, were dragged into this circus for the crime of having eyes and ears and independent thoughts. If your story and your case is strong, the evidence will do the heavy lifting. You're not going to have to drop your case the second you freak out because people caught you lying about asking Sony to delete evidence. And I find this contradiction pretty remarkable, where we're told that Blake represents courage and survivors, but the criticism of Blake must be hunted down. We're told she represents women's rights, but women who get in her way are expendable. Women she doesn't like are expendable. Somehow every woman in the world is supposed to be scrutinized except for Blake. At some point, it feels less like advocacy for survivors and more like a PR campaign wrapped in like weird empowerment slogans. Advocacy is supposed to be about the truth and fairness for everybody and justice for people who have been wrong. It's not supposed to be a celebrity branding exercise where, you know, the people with the most money, their narrative wins, and then dissenters get subpoenaed and punished and dragged through the legal system for something that honestly had nothing to do with them. Advocacy to protect vulnerable people shouldn't be, you know, spearheaded or represented by somebody whose legacy is treating disagreement or critics as something to be crushed rather than acknowledged and answered. If that's the role model for this movement and for these organizations that we're supposed to celebrate, then the movement deserves better, and preferably someone who doesn't seem to view basic civil rights as optional whenever they become inconvenient. Now, about Victoria Burke, the architect of the 47.1 law in California, I've seen both a lot of support for Victoria and a lot of criticism over the last couple days. Personally, I feel Victoria has every right to be angry. And I know that Burke isn't really dialed into the, you know, deep details of this case. And she's not a huge supporter of anyone, not Blake, not Justin. Her main concern is this bill. She's trying to bring this bill to other states to implement laws like 47.1 in California that she spearheaded. And I think when it comes to something so personal to you, especially when it's attached to trauma or something really harmful in your life, I think it's okay to be protective about that. She didn't just support 47.1, she created it, or she was one of the people who created it. And this wasn't some kind of like celebrity-backed cause that she discovered on Instagram. She spent years building it, advocating for it and expanding it because she believed survivors needed protection from retaliatory lawsuits. And I'm not just talking about in California. She's been doing this for years and has now gotten it passed in multiple states. And then came Blake Lively. According to Victoria, what she thought was a survivor protection law suddenly started looking like a celebrity brand opportunity. And Victoria has publicly stated she's unhappy seeing the law become what she kind of describes as a PR redemption tool. And she said she doesn't want Blake Lively turning this law into, or her bill, into the Met Gala. That's a pretty devastating criticism because it's not coming from a YouTuber. It's not coming from a Baldoni supporter. It's not coming from critics. It's coming from the woman whose name should be attached to this law in the first place. And Blake Lively actively cut her out. If you spend years writing legislation, lobbying for it, defending it, and trying to expand it across the country, and you wake up one morning and discover that the public now associates it with Blake Lively, who hasn't been totally honest in her case, by the way, that's got to feel like devastating, I would think. It's got to be incredibly painful. And I know that she's not a Justin Baldoni supporter, but I still think that her feelings are valid and that she should have a right to speak her mind about this. And I know a lot of people are questioning her motivations, but like I said, this is something that she's very attached to because it's related to something very traumatic that happened to her. And it seems to me that her intentions are good. Now, I know a lot of us have concerns about the constitutionality of this law. A lot of us have concerns about how it can be weaponized against someone who's falsely accused. But the intentions, I believe, are good. So I believe that people should hear her out. Burke said she wanted the focus to be on survivors, not celebrities, not Blake Lively. And looking at the headlines now, it's hard to argue that she was wrong. Nobody's talking about the ordinary people that this law is designed to help. They're talking about Blake Lively because all of a sudden, Victoria Burke's hard work, based largely in her own trauma, is all about Blake Lively. And that's what Blake Lively does. She swoops in, she'll take over people's work, and she takes all the glory. And for people who are doing the legwork on these things, the glory isn't everything, but in the process of her getting her fame and fortune and goodwill with the public who don't know what she's been doing behind the scenes, she destroys parts of these projects that are meant to help ordinary people. And she does not give a single fuck. Nobody's talking about survivor protections right now. They're talking about Blake and Blake's feuds. Nobody's talking about Victoria Burke's work. They're talking about Blake and how Blake shut her out. I think that she has a right to be upset about that. And while her intention may not be to defend or support Justin Baldoni, I still think she has a valid point. I still think that matters. And I can only speak for myself in this, right? But I think a lot of people would echo this sentiment. I believe Justin. I think he's a good person. I think he's a great family. I think they're good people. I want to see them succeed and to move on. And I want this woman to leave them alone. And it is absolutely crazy that a celebrity would have such a chokehold on so much of the population that I've been attacked and accused of weird collusion and secret conspiracy links to the Wayfarer parties and all kinds of things for saying that. And that's, I'm going to treat that from now on the same way that I treated these people outside the courthouse for this organization. I'm going to give them a wide berth. I'm going to leave them alone. And I'm going to accept and respect that they have a right to public spaces and they have a right to express their opinions, even if I think they're wrong, and that we can coexist. And I believe, despite, a lot of people's opinions to the contrary, that everything is going to be okay. I believe that Justin and his family are going to be okay. And if they ever needed someone to talk to or they needed support, not in a way that I would be paid to talk about anything publicly, but, if they just needed a friend, I would be here. I'm very strong in my beliefs, and there's no reason for me to feel guilty about that. I like these people. I would want to be here. And if people continue to make up weird fan fiction about conspiracies and about my life and about whatever connection I have to them, then so be it. I think that Justin and Jamie and Steve and their families all deserve a hell of a lot better than they've gotten. I think that Jen deserves a hell of a lot better. And everyone else involved in that side of the lawsuit has been wrongfully attacked in a lot of ways, sometimes just for doing their jobs. And they've shown a tremendous amount of strength and courage in standing up for themselves. And I appreciate that. But that's all I really got to say for now on this case stuff. I did talk to Prof. Joe a few days in the stream about the hearing, talk more about the legal arguments that were made, If you want to go watch that, I'll put a link below in the comments. Like I said, my mom was in an accident on Monday before the hearing, and so I'm going to go hang out at my parents' house for a little bit and see her, and then I'll go from there. Thanks, everyone. Don't forget to hit the like button for me because it helps me out a lot, and I'll see you guys soon.